Hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm just trying to let more people trickle in.
So I guess we will kind of wait for a minute or so.
Yep, we're just gonna wait a few more minutes to allow anyone else to join. We're really excited for everyone to be here today. Thank you all for joining us. And we hope you have some great questions for Chien and Nicole. Thank you for joining us. So I guess we can go ahead and get started. My name is Shelby, and I'm the new events coordinator at VOYCE. Thank you all for coming, and we hope you're excited for today's webinar. I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen. All right, so today we have for you with our community education series, Residents' Rights and the Intersection of State Policy. Today's presenters are Chien Hung, who is our program director of many of our programs here at VOYCE. He does the long-term care ombudsman, Voice Connect, and Friendly Voice programs. Then we also have Nicole Lynch, who is our policy and advocacy director. Before we get started with that, we're just gonna go ahead and thank our education sponsors. And just wanted to let you know about our upcoming events. We also have on Tuesday, November 8th, Lori Peterson Sakai, who is one of our board chairs, presenting Protecting Seniors from Financial Abuse and Fraud. And we also have Mr. Robin Pendleton, and he will be presenting on December 13th, Signs of Abuse and How to Identify Those and Protect Your Loved One. Just as a reminder, we do have a survey for you all to complete at the end of our Zoom session today. And we would really appreciate if you completed this, as it helps us with our programming for the future. And of course, we hope you have questions for Chien and Nicole today. Please submit those through the chat function or the Q&A function, however you'd like, and I will be reading those at the end. I'm going to go ahead and stop my sharing.
So I think it is the cue for me to start sharing and to start the presentation. Okay, so when I start sharing, I will actually not be able to look at the. I will not be able to see the audiences. So just let me know if you guys could see my slides. Okay. So are we good? Can you guys see my slide? Yes. Okay, great. So thank you guys for coming. And today we are gonna actually talk about the resident rights and the state policy. So sounds pretty serious. And then Nicole and I, mostly Nicole, will make it very, very interesting for you guys. Okay, so disclosures. So the moderator, and that is Shelby, and also the speakers, meaning Nicole and myself, we are both employees by an ombudsman organization receiving government funding. Okay, and now with this slide, I'm actually gonna have Nicole talk a little bit about herself.
All right. Thank you, Chien. And hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. My name is Nicole Lynch, and I am the Policy and Advocacy Director for VOYCE. So I do a lot of our advocacy work in Jefferson City and building relationships with lawmakers and making sure that our long-term care residents are remembered when lawmakers are passing policy. I have a bachelor's degree from Missouri State University in psychology and a master's degree in social work from University of Columbia, Mizzou. I've been with VOYCE for about 3 years and doing advocacy work since day one. And previously to my role at VOYCE, I spent about 5 years working in various residential care facilities. I've worked in facilities in Springfield and in the Columbia, Missouri area. And I've held positions all the way from med tech to facility coordinator. So kind of been throughout the spectrum of positions in an actual facility. And I've been with VOYCE ever since. So happy to be here and happy to share with you guys today.
Thank you, Nicole. And then for those who are meeting Nicole for the first time, or for those who don't know Nicole, Nicole is a pistol in Jefferson City. And a lot of people know Nicole in Jefferson City, so make sure you reach out to her. And that's there is a Nicole's information, contact information there. And also after today's presentation, I know you guys are gonna ask. After today's presentation, Shelby will share our slides, our contact info with you guys. Okay, so now my turn. I think some people already know me, and but the things I like so much talking about myself. My name is Chien, and I am the program director at VOYCE. And I have a master's degree in social work as well as a master's degree in gerontology. And I started at VOYCE in 2016, and at that time I was simply just focusing on ombudsman program, and then gradually they actually had me started overseeing a little bit more programs. So I'm the program directors of all the programs at VOYCE here. Okay, now so overview. So today, what we are going to talk about, of course, we will talk about resident rights. But resident rights, there are a lot of resident rights. So we are actually going to focus on a few of them, which actually are related to the policies and the new laws that Nicole will talk about. So those ones that we are actually going to really focus on today. And then, so those are the ones that we will deep dive into, and that they include visitors' choices. So residents' rights about visitors, residents' rights about choices. And then we will talk about the accommodation for residents' needs, as well as protection from abuse and neglect and exploitation. So those two items that I just mentioned, they of course are associated with two new laws, and then one is Essential Caregivers Program Act, and then the other one is Authorized Electronic Monitoring. That we actually did a workshop a couple of years ago. Then we will talk about, if you are interested, and I hope you are, please become an advocate with us, okay? And then later on, we will have our Q&A time. So resident rights. So I hope you guys can see this. So there are the items that are in bold here, right? Including participating in your care choices, and including protection from abuse, neglect, including the visitors. So these ones, I will not really spend too much time at this moment on them because we will actually dive into them later. Then I'm gonna just very briefly talk about the other rights that we are not focused on today. So accommodation of your needs. Well, you know, what is my needs? My needs is that every weekend I'm gonna need to go home to visit family members, or my needs are I don't want to go to this doc's appointment because the doc's appointment actually is conflicting with my movie time with my buddies here, right? So long-term care community needs to accommodate. We need to work together, okay? Accommodation of my needs. And then manage my financial affairs. Sure. That is if I am my own responsible party, right? And then you know, I can make my decisions for myself. The facility, the community, they have to let me manage my own financial. I have the right to manage my own financial. Doesn't matter if they like it or not. It doesn't matter if a community likes it or not. So for example, well, you know, a community wants me to sign over my account so that every month they can simply take out the rate. And I refuse. I don't want to sign over my account. And I'm my own person. I'm my own responsible party. Do I have that kind of right? Yes, I do. And so, you know, the community doesn't need to like it. I'm my own person. I have the right to actually manage my own financial affairs. Therefore, I have the right to say, well, I'm gonna every month write you a check. I'm not gonna sign over my account to you. Okay. Fully disclose the information. That a lot of times when we talk about this, that is about someone's medical information. So medical information, of course, is protected by by HIPAA, and everyone knows about HIPAA, right? So, but do I, as a resident in a nursing home, in an assisted living, do I have the right to have all the information disclosed to me? Sure, I do. But the problem is that if I am no longer my responsible party, if I have a guardian, if I have a power of attorney, an agent that makes decisions for me, then do I still get to have that? Well, that's a very good question, and then a lot of different scenarios could actually have different kind of answers to that. So if you have questions about that, make sure you give me a call or connect with me, and let's have a further discussion about that. Okay. So privacy, sure, this is also a very important right a resident should have, especially when a resident has a semi-private room, meaning if that's a Medicaid room and then a resident has a roommate, then we really need to make sure that a resident's privacy is protected, okay? The last one here on the bottom, remain in the facility. So this is simply talking about a facility's discharge and transfer. A resident has the right to remain in the facility, even even if the facility for whatever reason, non-payment and whatnot, they issue a discharge letter. They want resident to be out. A resident still has the right. In order to exercise that right, of course, they have to file an appeal against that discharge that's issued by the facility. Okay. So if a resident doesn't know how to file that appeal, no problem. Reach out to my office, and all of our ombudsmen here, they can help you file that appeal. But the bottom line is that there has to be a written letter in order to discharge someone. There's no such a thing as a verbal discharge. There's no such a thing as well, you are the family, you need to find a placement for mother, and I'm not responsible for finding that placement. No, that is actually a violation. So a long-term care facility should not do that and cannot do that because it's illegal. And so we actually have a lot of questions, have a lot of people that reached out to us regarding this particular part. And then I actually did a 3-hour workshop on this discharge and transfer before, but of course, not today. We cannot do that today, right? So because Nicole also needs to talk. So we are looking at probably next month, I will do another session just completely focused on the transfer and discharge, meaning remain in the facility, this resident right, okay? So let's go to residents' right to visitors and choices, okay? I'm not gonna read all those words, and in fact, I am actually gonna do it a different way. These are the questions that are often asked to my ombudsman or to myself, and then let's just go through let's just review residents' rights through these questions. Okay, so well, is there a visiting hours? Can a facility, can a community actually restrict visiting hours? Well, every day you can only visit from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. After 8 p.m., you are gonna have to be out. Is there such a thing? No, there's not. So a long-term care community should allow residents to have visitors at any time. Okay, there should not be a visiting hours. And I understand a lot of times it's a challenge to actually really practice this, because 2 o'clock in the morning, the community doesn't really have a whole lot of staff, just like in daytime, and now we have to accommodate for a visitor 2 o'clock in the morning. It doesn't sound doable, or it doesn't sound reasonable. I understand the appearance of that, but that is not what we are talking about here. What we are talking about here is that the law actually allows the visitors to come in at any time, as long as the resident likes them to come in. Okay, therefore, should there be a curfew? No, there should not be a curfew. Okay, so that's the resident's right for visitors. But now can we say that, well, so a visitor comes in at 2 o'clock, and now this visitor is making a lot of noises, causing commotions to not only to their loved one, also to all the residents in the facility. Now what are we gonna do? Well, then that's a different issue here. Then that brings us to the second one, the second question here. Can a long-term care community restrict a visitor? Well, let me put it this way. A long-term care community is responsible for residents' well-being and health, and safety and health, 24/7. Okay, they have to provide 24/7 protective oversight. Now, if that's the case, when a visitor comes in at 2 o'clock in the morning and causing a whole lot of disturbances, causing a whole lot of commotions, that means that then the facility needs to do something about it in order to ensure that 24/7 protective oversight is provided, right? Therefore, can they restrict a visitor that actually comes in and they act out? Sure, they can, but that actually is a different issue, talking about the visiting hours, the first one, versus can they restrict the visitor? Okay, so I hope you can kind of get my point, understand what I'm trying to tell you. If you can't, no problem. You will have my my number. Please reach out to me, and then we can talk a little bit more about it. Okay. Now, talking about visitors restrictions, a facility can actually do it a few different ways. For example, they can say, well, we are going to need you to actually make an appointment in order to come in and then we are actually gonna have a different space, different room for you and your loved one to visit, right? So there are different ways to accommodate. Okay, then if you have more questions, please reach out to me. Then we can talk a little bit more. The bottom line is that every resident's safety and health and well-being have to be insured in the long-term care community. Okay, so talking about the choices, well, I don't want to get up early. I'm never an early riser. Do I have to get up early? No. Can I refuse to get up early? Yes. Okay. Do I have the right to eat my meal at a time that I want? Yes, you do have the right to do that. And then do I have the right to actually choose my meal? Well, they are serving pork chop today. I don't like pork chop. I don't eat pork chop. I don't eat pork. I need to eat meat, a steak, or I need to eat chicken, whatever. Well, then we can certainly talk about that, and then for the community to actually find a way to accommodate. Now, I said to find a way to accommodate. I did not say, well, a facility, a community has to provide whatever you want to eat, because if that were the regulation, a facility has to provide whatever I want to eat, then every meal it's gonna be lobster and filet mignon, right? Because so I cannot be that demanding, right? Okay, so can I ask the community to reschedule a doc's appointment for my convenience? Sure. Because I have this exercise class, I have that commitment that I have to attend to. Therefore, doc's appointment need to be rescheduled. I certainly can ask. However, need to know that there might be a consequence. The consequences would be, well, they can reach out to the doctor to reschedule, but the doctor's office will not be able to take you in again for another 4 months. And keep in mind, that would be the consequences. Okay. Can I decline to participate in bingo? Well, I use bingo as an example, because that is one thing that myself, I will not play when I'm in the nursing home myself, right? So do I have the right to decline? Yes, I do have the right. I have the right to refuse, right? Then how about smoking? Well, I know smoking is bad, but can I smoke? Sure, you can. You can smoke. Okay. I want to spend my money the way I want. Is that my right? Yes, that's your right. So every month I have $2,000, and can I spend all $2,000 in clothing? in car. Sure, I can. But if I do that, I also need to understand then there's a consequences. And what is the consequences? That is that I cannot pay my rent. Therefore, the nursing home will be able to discharge me for that. Okay, so I talked too much. Now let's have Nicole talk about Essential Caregivers Program.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Chien. So I'm going to talk to you guys about a new law that was just recently passed and went into effect in August of this year. And it is a law that kind of secures the residents' right to visitors. This law was passed in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. I'm sure if you were working in long-term care, if you had a resident in long-term care, if you watched the news or read the newspaper, you saw what happened in long-term care during the pandemic. And one of the many things that happened was that the federal government issued blanket waivers, which waived the residents' rights to visitors. And when that happened, we really saw residents go downhill. Residents were isolated for months on end, stuck in their bedrooms, eating meals alone. They were unable to see their families. Some of them were lucky and were able to do window visits or maybe a Zoom call or a FaceTime with their loved ones. But ultimately, all of the long-term care residents were so isolated that it resulted in death for many of them, or what we call failure to thrive, because they simply had no reason to continue living. So the Essential Caregivers Program is a new law that allows long-term care residents the right to have visitors even during periods of suspended visitation. So who is an essential caregiver? An essential caregiver is a family member, a friend, a guardian, or any other individual selected by either the resident or the resident's guardian. So they have that choice, that is their right to that choice, to pick who they would like to be their essential caregiver should we ever go into a period of restricted visitation ever again. This program only is in place when the governor declares a state of emergency due to infectious or contagious diseases. So right now, as it stands, we are not under our Essential Caregivers Program because we are not under a state of emergency. So we are operating as usual. Should we go into a state of emergency, that is when this program would kick in, only if that state of emergency is specifically related to infectious or communicable diseases. So essential caregivers, what are essential caregivers? Essential caregivers are allowed in-person contact at minimum, so it could be more, but at minimum for 4 hours a day for 7 days a week to the resident that they are assigned to. The essential caregivers are providing physical, mental, spiritual, and emotional care. So the essential caregivers, they're no longer just visiting. They're not there to just visit anymore. They are now there to help provide care. So that might look like providing showers. That might look like assisting with feeding. That might look like bathing or toileting. But that might also look like praying or simply playing cards with their loved one to reduce isolation and help with their mental and emotional health. So it's going to look different for each individual designated essential caregiver, but they are no longer just visitors. They are now a part of the resident's care team. And then essential caregivers are also adhering to infection control protocol. That includes PPE, screening, and testing. So essential caregivers are held to the exact same standards as staff coming in and out of care facilities so that we can mitigate risk. We know that during any infectious disease, disaster, or state of emergency, this is something that we need to be very, very careful about. And while we were so careful during COVID, we still know that COVID got into almost every single long-term care facility. So we want to be careful and make sure that we are adhering to our PPE standards and making sure that we are balancing public health with the need for reduced isolation and care for the residents. Okay, these are just a couple things that you might need to know about the Essential Caregivers Act. So for residents, families, and guardians, start talking to your facility about these policies and procedures. Like I said, this is a new law. So the Department of Health and Senior Services is actually still developing their rules on this policy. So we are still waiting for some guidance from the department right now. However, start thinking about if you're a resident, start thinking about who you want to designate as your essential caregiver. Or if you're a guardian, start thinking about who would I like to designate as that essential caregiver. We hope that this is something we will never need to use. But if it is, the last thing we want is to wait until we're in a state of emergency and then everyone is chaotically trying to designate an essential caregiver and get into the facility. It's best to start thinking about it early and have that lined up. So should we ever need it, you're ready to go, all of the paperwork is done, and should be a streamlined process. The essential caregivers, so you can designate up to 2 essential caregivers, but only 1 can be in the facility at a time. 2 caregivers cannot be in the facility taking care of 1 resident at one time. Those caregivers can leave and replace each other though during their allotted time period. So if you're only allotted 4 hours, and you can have 1 caregiver there for maybe 2-3 hours and the other there to cover the last end of that shift. And then if you're an administrator or staff, some things to start thinking about is developing policies and procedures around this. Like I said, the department will be releasing guidance. They have a proposed rule out right now that is up for commenting. And so once they have finalized that, we will have a little bit more guidance, but it will be up to the facilities to develop their own policies and procedures around how they want to document, like who the designated caregivers are. How are you going to monitor their screening and testing and signing in and out and things like that. These are probably things that you guys have been doing now. Since we've been in a pandemic for almost 3 years, you've probably done all of these things and worked through all of these things by now. But just things to be thinking about for the future. Something else that facilities and really essential caregivers themselves and residents should know is that within this law, there is an option for the program to be suspended. So the program can be suspended for up to 7 days, and it can have up to 1 7-day extension of that original suspension period. So if you're requesting a suspension, you must put it in writing. You must list the specific reasons why the Essential Caregivers Program poses a serious community health risk to your facility. And then an explanation of any extenuating factors that are relevant to the suspension and the length of time that the request of the suspension that cannot exceed 7 days. So maybe you only request an extension for 5 days. Maybe that's all you need. And you requested a suspension for 5 days, you'd submit that to the department and then they approve it. Your Essential Caregivers Program will be suspended. So essential caregivers will not be coming in and out of the facility during that 5-day period or however long your suspension is granted. If you need an extension to that, you can request 1 extension and only 1 extension, and that would be requested on the last day prior to the expiration of your original suspension. So if you received 5 days suspension from the program, on day 4, if you decide, hey, 1 more day isn't enough for us, we need to extend it, you can then request from the department on day 4 of that 5 and say, hey, we need an extension. You cannot do more than 14 consecutive days suspension of the program and no more than 45 days total in a 12-month period.
Well, I hope everyone remembers all the numbers that Nicole was just talking about. Okay, so and of course I was joking. Okay, so now we are gonna talk about the abuse neglect. So the protection from abuse and then the right to participate in care. Now let's start with the right to participate in care plan. That is one sign that if a resident is participating in care, right? So a resident has to be invited to a care plan meeting. Okay, so the resident can of course say no. I don't want to go. Just that it's a waste of my time, whatever. Okay, that's fine. Resident always has the right to refuse, no problem. However, a facility has to still do attend to their what they're supposed to do, their duties, their responsibilities. They are required to invite the resident to come to the care plan. Okay. So talking about the abuse and neglect. So here is the Missouri Abuse Hotline here, right? 1-800-392-0210. For those ones who actually work in this industry, you probably memorized this number already. Now there is a portal that anyone can actually report abuse or neglect, no matter that's resident themselves or the family members or friends or the neighbor. They can actually go through this portal and report abuse, neglect, and exploitation. Okay, and then of course on the right hand side, this is the ombudsman program, and the ombudsman program's numbers. That 1-800 number, it is actually to the state ombudsman office, and the 314 number, it is to our office here in St. Louis. So what is the difference though when there's a complaint in the nursing home? What is the difference? Who do you need to call? Well, let's kind of divide it like this. So let's say if this complaint, if just happen, you kind of see a way that, well, we want to give the facility a chance to actually improve themselves. We want to give them a chance to actually work with us to make sure that, well, we can improve the care, we can improve the services through a care plan or through a meeting, through an ombudsman that actually goes to talk with the facility staff, then call the ombudsman. Okay. Now that is, of course, if the resident gives us consent, give the ombudsman consent, then we can then go talk to the facility, the agency and whatnot, the staff. Okay. And the reason is that ombudsman program is a resident initiated program. Without residents' consent, we simply just cannot proceed with any complaint investigation, anything. Okay. Now there's a point that it has escalated, unfortunately, to abuse, neglect, that care plans don't work, and then just a meeting doesn't work, then we're gonna have to have someone that actually comes in to actually have something serious done. For example, for the facility to get penalized, right? And that is the time that we need to get this. We need to give a phone call to Adult Abuse and Neglect hotline. That 1-800 number here, 392-0210. That number. Now that being said, so we can also say this: ombudsman program is for what is the ultimate advocacy? Education, right? Education is the ultimate advocacy. So ombudsman is to come into facilities to educate the staff, or even the family members about how things should go. What are the residents' rights? Stuff like this. So before any issue happened. So when ombudsman actually does do their job and to educate the facility, then hopefully we will be able to keep issues from happening. So the ombudsman's assistance can actually happen prior to any issues from happening, prior to any issues happening, right? Occurrences. Now, the DRL, the Division of Regulation and Licensure, meaning the Adult Abuse and Neglect Hotline, that is, say, after an abuse, after a complaint, after a neglect case has already happened. Now, the ombudsman program maybe, you know, just for a ombudsman to conduct a care plan is not enough. Now we need the nursing home surveyors, the adult abuse hotline to actually come in to intervene. Okay, so it's a pre and post kind of mechanisms here. Okay. So, then then is there a way to say, you know, to keep abuse, neglect from happening? Well, here's one way, and very efficient way, to keep neglect and abuse from happening, and that is this authorized electronic monitoring. Because if you are able to, if family members with residents signed consent, if family get to put in a monitoring device, a camera or whatnot, and then you can monitor, well, if my loved one is actually getting good care, if my loved one is actually on the floor, you know, issues like that, right? That is a very efficient way to keep that kind of issues from happening. On the other hand, though, so a facility has to, or they actually need to, probably want to encourage the family to consider about this option. Why? Because, well, you don't want to keep accusing me. Well, I don't want you to keep accusing me of not taking care of your loved one here. Because, well, you know, just install a camera, and now you can see that we, the facility staff, we actually are taking care of your mother. Okay, it is certainly not like what your mother said to you, that she hit the call light and then 5 hours later we are still not helping her. It is certainly not like that. And because mom's got dementia, and then mom's telling you that in order to get your attention, right? That kind of cases, that it actually happened. So for as a facility, I would say it might be a good way, good approach to keep you from getting into this kind of issue, this kind of he say, she say kind of issue, because a camera is an easy way to prove that a facility, you are doing your job, right? But of course, talking about electronic monitoring, I'm gonna need to have Nicole, our expert, talk about it a little bit more.
Thanks, Chien. Okay, so authorized electronic monitoring, as Chien has already hinted at, that's just really a fancy word for a video camera. This is a policy that was passed in the state of Missouri in 2020. It was passed within the last minutes of the legislative session. And so we have been able, I think it was started in September 3rd of 2020 is when residents could first start installing video cameras in their rooms in the state of Missouri. So all electronic monitoring really is it guarantees the resident the right to have their room monitored by a video recording. And so why would I want to get that in my room, or why would I want to put that in my loved one's room? Well, electronic monitoring is not necessarily the end all be all to ending, like as a solution to ending abuse and neglect, but it certainly acts as a deterrent, because the family could be monitoring the other end of the camera at any time of day. So when people go into your loved one's room, or if you're a resident, if they go into your room and know that there is someone else monitoring and someone else watching and someone else putting a loving, watchful eye over you, that you're probably not going to be abused, that risk is going to go down. It's really just a tool in the toolbox as a means of protection. But like I said, it certainly is not the end all be all to ending abuse. And there was a 2019 report from the Office of Inspector General that suggested that 84% of abuse and neglect cases in long-term care goes unreported. So this is a way, through electronic monitoring, to monitor if abuse or neglect is actually occurring. And if it is, you can use it to confirm or deny allegations, kind of like Chien had mentioned, allegations of abuse or neglect. So this is especially helpful with residents with Alzheimer's or dementia that may be making allegations against a staff member of some form of abuse. Through this camera, you can then prove whether or not those are true or not, because you can see what's actually happening. And should that staff member not actually be doing that, it's a good way to just let them off the hook and we know that this is not true. Cameras in electronic monitoring cameras in bedrooms are also really helpful for monitoring any sort of care concerns that you might have. Kind of like Chien had said, maybe there's a concern that the call light hasn't been answered for 5 hours, or maybe there's a concern that your loved one is not receiving fresh water throughout the day. I don't know what it might be, but it's a good way to monitor any sort of care concerns that you have. And then it really helps bring peace of mind to the resident and to the loved ones or the family members that are monitoring the camera. So everyone has the right to have the camera installed in their room. But you must follow the rules. We know that long-term care loves rules and regulations. So of course there's some rules. The first rule is that you must sign an authorized electronic monitoring acknowledgement and request form. Shelby just posted that in a link to that form in the chat. If you're interested, that must be filled out and signed and submitted to the facility and the department before monitoring can ever begin. In addition to that, if you have a roommate or if your loved one has a roommate, they must also consent to the monitoring. Now, the roommate has a couple of options. The roommate can consent to monitoring with no restrictions, or the roommate can consent to monitoring as long as the camera is not pointed at them. So there are options. And then if you have a roommate that is not consenting, it is an option, and the facility should look at moving the individual that wants the camera into a room with a consenting roommate that would also agree to having a camera. And then lastly, all costs associated with the equipment, the setup, and the maintenance and the Wi-Fi are on the resident and their family. So this is something that VOYCE will probably be working on in the next coming years, at looking at how do we eliminate that financial burden to using this policy. So we know that there are plenty of residents out there that cannot afford to buy the Wi-Fi and pay for the monthly Wi-Fi to install a camera into their bedroom, but they certainly still deserve to take part in this right and to feel that peace of mind and to be monitored. So this is definitely something, a piece of advocacy that VOYCE will be looking at in the coming years. Just a couple other things. You want to go back, Chien? Oh, sorry. Just a couple other things that I would say about this is that the camera must be open and obvious. You cannot put a hidden camera into your loved one's room or into your room. That would be unauthorized electronic monitoring, and that is illegal. So the camera must be open. It must be obvious. It must be placed in a stable, stationed position. It can't be on a rolly cart or anything that moves around. It has to be somewhere stable. And then the resident and the family is responsible for posting a sign outside of the resident's room that reads, "This room is being monitored by an electronic monitoring device." This is so that anyone who walks into the room is aware, or we hope if they're able to read the sign and understand the sign, that they are aware that the room is under electronic monitoring. For the facilities, if you are an administrator of a facility, the facilities are required to post a notice outside of the facility. So the family posts a sign outside of the resident's room or their door. The facility posts a sign outside the actual facility on the doors entering to the facility, stating that some of the rooms of residents might be monitored using electronic monitoring. So you have that warning coming into the facility, and then you have a warning when you go into that actual resident's room.
Okay. So
And
thank
then
you.
sorry, go
Yeah.
ahead, Chien.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Lastly, I was just going to say that if you were interested in advocating for quality of care, for things that impact resident lives at our state capitol, please feel free to reach out. Your story and your experience in long-term care is honestly the most effective way that we change policy and make good policy. Lawmakers don't necessarily understand what it's like to live in long-term care, to have a loved one in long-term care, to work in long-term care. Many of them have not had that experience yet. And so stories, impactful stories of what's going on is the best thing that we can bring to lawmakers when we're looking at how do we improve long-term care in the landscape that exists around long-term care to be better for the residents. We can always do better. And so if you're interested, that is my contact information. That is my phone number and email. Please feel free to reach out, and happy to get you involved in some of our work.
Yeah. And also, just on that note, if you are interested in volunteering with us, no matter becoming an ombudsman or just to become our friendly voice volunteer, please reach out to us. And so we have now the rest of the time is going to be Q&A questions. And of course, these are the events that shall be mentioned at the very beginning about our upcoming webinars. So you will certainly see these in our slides, or you can actually find the information on our website. So let me stop sharing, and then Shelby can start asking us questions.
All right. Yeah. So we've got plenty of great questions here. And of course, if anyone still has any, there's still time to submit them, again, through the Q&A or the chat. So I'll just go through and start reading what I see. So firstly, just a question about CEU details. Those are continuing education units, and we are working to provide those in the future, in the coming months. Those take a little more planning in terms of our speakers and our topics to submit to the boards who provide those units. So those will be provided in the coming months, and please keep an eye out for those in our upcoming education. So, let's see. And then another question we had is if there is a Missouri law regarding undue influence by a facility or any of its representatives or employees.
I don't know that I understand the question. An undue influence of what?
It may be, let's see, it may be, yeah, that's a good, let me see. Well, maybe let's move on and see
Yeah, Donna, if you're out there, let us know.
Yeah. But her next question was, are Medicaid rooms always shared rooms? And is there Missouri law on how many people can be placed into one room?
Yes, so Medicaid rooms are shared rooms, and then that's a lot of times in the industry it's called a semi-private. So, but because that's what Medicaid agrees to provide. Now, some residents might be lucky because simply they just don't have a roommate, but Medicaid rooms are always shared rooms. Now, the regulation now it's at maximum it's two people in one room.
There are some facilities that have been grandfathered into rooms that allow 4 people in one room. That used to be the standard, and any facility that was built prior to the new standard, which is those 2 people per room, those original facilities are still grandfathered in to the standard of 4 people per room. And so that's something that I've been looking at maybe getting changed in the near future, is how do we move away from that grandfathering standard and move towards a standard where every resident only has 1 roommate, regardless of what facility they are remaining in.
And then once they are rebuilding those four-person rooms, they can no longer rebuild a room for 4 people. No, it's just those are grandfathered in, and that's it. They cannot add more rooms like that.
All right, thank you guys. Another question we have is, are essential caregivers applicable in assisted living facilities or just nursing homes?
In assisted living facilities as well.
Okay. And the next thing is, this one came in right after Nicole, the slide called Need to Know, where you talk about residents, families, and guardians, what they need to know and what administrators and staff need to know. This question says, this person would like specific information on the new state guideline/law as to why 2 essential caregivers cannot be in the facility at the same time, and what are the reasons for that?
Yeah, so the reason that 2 essential caregivers cannot be in the facility at the same time is because the Essential Caregivers Program is only active during a state of emergency around communicable diseases. And so we are trying to limit the interaction, just like during COVID, when we restricted visitors. Now we're saying, okay, we understand the need for restricted visitors in order to maintain public health as best as possible and reduce the spread of infection. However, we're also recognizing the equally important need that residents are not completely isolated. And so a good compromise in between there is just allowing 1 essential caregiver, especially when you consider some of these facilities are really large. There's facilities that have 300 residents. If every resident had 2 essential caregivers in that facility, it wouldn't be safe, especially during any sort of pandemic or public health emergency. And so it's a way that we can make sure that we are being cautious about public health and mitigating risk for spreading infection while still allowing the residents to have at least 1 visitor. Now you and your daughter would be able to be designated caregivers. You could each be one of the 2 designated caregivers. You just cannot enter the facility at the same time.
Okay, and going back up to the undue influence. Thank you, Donna, for more context into that. Undue influence is a term commonly applied to senior relationships that cause the person to do or act in a particular way through the action, words, or deeds of another. So, are there any laws in Missouri protecting seniors from this undue influence from the facilities, the owners of the facility, outside influence, basically?
So I don't know about any particular law. I will say that in the Essential Caregivers Bill, there is a provision in there that if an essential caregiver is causing any sort of harm to the resident or major disturbance to the facility, or maybe they're the ones instigating abuse or neglect or whatever that is, then they're not going to maintain their essential caregiver status. There is provisions in there for suspending individual caregivers and then also the revocation of that status should that be deemed necessary. But I don't know. I'd have to talk more and look further into just a broader law.
Okay, and as for the electronic monitoring, is the current language of that bill, can you go back over where families can get the equipment and Wi-Fi and things of that sort?
Yeah, so there's not really like one central place where that can come from. The Wi-Fi, it could be a hotspot, it could be a Wi-Fi service that you provide, it's or that you pay monthly for. It's really up to you. You are able to choose the camera that you would like. There's tons of different cameras out there that range in price range. I would say I personally would suggest one that has two-way communication, because that can also help kind of reduce isolation. And it's an easy communication tool if it has two-way communication. But certainly it's up to the individuals to determine what type of camera best meets their needs and their price point.
Okay. Another question we had was, do the facilities have the right to keep residents out of their rooms? Someone said, we were told it was easier for staff to keep an eye on their residents if they were not in their rooms, and they believe it is because rooms that are monitored are locked.
No, facility does not have the right to say that you're gonna have to be out of your room. That is just a weird request. No, that cannot happen.
Yeah, and the facility can't keep others out of the room either. Like if someone's wanting to go into a room that is electronically monitored, that sign on the door is technically their way of consenting to entering that room. So if you have a room and you want someone to come in and the facility is not allowing it, that's not allowed.
And with authorized electronic monitoring, can facilities refuse to those cameras whatsoever?
No, I saw that comment and I was going to say that's illegal. Reach out to your ombudsman.
Okay. And is electronic monitoring applicable in assisted living as well as nursing homes?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Let's see. Does the essential caregiver law apply to private facilities?
Yes, that is a statewide policy. So that will apply to skilled nursing and assisted living facilities and private facilities as well.
And so another comment about a facility telling a family that they cannot use two-way communication on cameras.
So, Brenda, I think so. No, that is not legal. So they cannot mandate that. So, I would say reach out to me, reach out to the ombudsman that oversees that area, and then we'll get this resolved. Okay.
And finally, we have one that says, must facilities accommodate the Missouri medical marijuana progression?
That's a you question. I don't think so.
Yeah, no, I don't. Yeah, well, there's a lot of gray areas in this, so I don't really have a definite answer to that yet.
What I have been told is that a lot of facilities, if you take Medicare, Medicaid dollars, those are federal dollars and federal programs, and it is still illegal at a federal level. And so even if Missouri were to legalize, the facilities that are under CMS will still be held to a federal standard. And so therefore, no, it would not be legal in a facility in Missouri.
Yes.
All right, thank you guys.
And I did want to say one more thing to Donna. It looks like she had said a question about only during emergencies like COVID. So I will say that the right to visitation is just a standard that is always allowed. So right now, definitely 2 people can go in. There's no, that is the right? And so that right was waived during COVID. And so that's why we need a bill specific to when rights are being waived. Now Missouri has this bill that says we're not going to allow that. We're not going to allow our residents' rights to be waived, even in situations such as a public health emergency.
Thank you, Nicole. So it looks like we've gone through all of our questions. anyone has any really quick ones, but overall, this is really great information today, guys. Really appreciate Chien and Nicole for being here. Thank you. Thank you to all our attendees. As we said before, we have our 2 upcoming community education programs for the end of the year. And those, again, the first Tuesday in November, protecting seniors from financial abuse and fraud. The first Tuesday in December is signs of abuse and how to protect your loved one. Thank you all for attending. Be sure to take our survey when you leave, and feel free to reach out to our speakers for more information today. Again, we will be sending out the slides and YouTube video to all attendees as well.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you,
Thank
guys.
you, everyone. Bye-bye.